Her hand was trembling. But it wasn't just the late autumn chill, not really. It was the hum of a decision, a choice made in the deafening silence of a life blown apart. Tonight, someone else's carefully built world was going to crumble, just like hers had. But this wasn't going to be a simple collapse. Oh no, this was a meticulously planned demolition. Every wire placed, every charge set, by a heart that had learned to beat with the cold, steady rhythm of payback. Some might call it madness. She just called it justice. Eleanor Ainsworth once thought her life was, well, perfect. A picture of quiet elegance. Her marriage to Richard? To everyone looking in, and for many years to Eleanor herself, it was the definition of contentment. 15 years, can you imagine? Woven together with shared laughs, whispered dreams, and the comfortable rhythm of just being together. Their home, a charming Victorian with a huge garden she poured her soul into, was her sanctuary. Every rose bush was a testament to the care she put into her world, into him. Richard, with that easy smile and the ambitious sparkle in his eyes, he'd been the sun her life gracefully revolved around. She'd backed his career, cheered his wins, and patched him up after his losses. Their life felt like a carefully curated gallery of perfect moments, each one, she believed, a brushstroke of shared joy. The illusion was flawless, wasn't it? A gilded cage, but she hadn't even seen the bars until the gold started to flake, showing the cold, hard metal underneath. It's almost painful now to think how naive she'd been, believing their bond was immune to the storms that wrecked other relationships. They were solid, Richard and Eleanor. An institution, even. The kind of couple others looked up to. Funny how quickly the unshakable can turn to rubble. How fast devotion can sour into something much stronger, much more dangerous. The change was subtle at first. Eleanor, who'd been like a ghost haunting her own home, started to move with a new, though pretty chilling, sense of purpose. She kept up the act of the grieving wife for Richard. Her sorrow was a carefully worn mask, hiding the furious calculations whirring away underneath. He, wrapped up in his own guilt and the thrill of his affair, only saw what he wanted to see. A woman who was broken, maybe, but ultimately manageable. He really underestimated her. They both did. Her revenge wouldn't be some messy, impulsive crime of passion. No, it would be a masterpiece of quiet, deadly precision. She started gathering information, her grief-fueled inertia replaced by a detective's laser focus. Isabel Moreau. The name echoed in her mind. Eleanor learned everything about her. Her routines, where she worked, her friends, her weak spots. The internet, usually a tool for connection, became Eleanor's weapon of choice for digging up dirt. Social media profiles, public records, whispered office gossip from Isabel's unsuspecting acquaintances, people Eleanor carefully befriended with fake, casual interest. Each piece of data was a thread, and Eleanor was weaving them into a tapestry of destruction. She found out Isabel was a rising star in a cutthroat marketing firm, ambitious, driven, and fiercely protective of her perfectly curated public image. She lived in a chic, minimalist apartment, a total contrast to Eleanor's warm, lived-in home. She had a small circle of close friends and a taste for expensive wine and gallery openings. In many ways, she was the exact opposite of Eleanor, or at least, the version of Eleanor Richard had apparently grown tired of. The more Eleanor learned, the colder her resolve became. This wasn't just about Richard's betrayal anymore. It was about Isabel, the woman who had knowingly walked into a marriage, who was complicit in Eleanor's pain. Eleanor's plans started to take shape, not as a single act, but as a series of carefully orchestrated events, designed to unravel Isabel's life from the inside out. It would be subtle at first, like a slow-acting poison, a whisper of doubt here, a misplaced trust there. The ultimate goal wasn't just to cause pain, but to engineer a complete social and professional implosion. A death of reputation, a death of security, a death of the life Isabel had so carefully built, perhaps on the ruins of Eleanor's own. She even found herself looking into that grim statistic. 75% of marriages that start as affairs end in divorce. A small, cold comfort that their illicit joy was statistically doomed, but it wasn't enough. No, Isabel needed to understand the true cost of her actions, directly from the woman whose life she'd helped shatter. This story, oh, it's just getting started, and believe me, The layers of deception are only beginning to peel away. If you're on the edge of your seat, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole of revenge actually goes, then you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single chilling development. Seriously, what would you do in Eleanor's shoes? Let me know down in the comments. The first move in Eleanor's revenge plot was deceptively simple, almost ordinary. It started with an anonymous email, expertly crafted, sent from a throwaway account, straight to Isabel's direct supervisor. The email didn't have any wild accusations or hysterical rants. Instead, it was a carefully worded concern from a fellow industry professional about certain unethical client engagement tactics Isabel was supposedly using, complete with vaguely referenced but impossible to verify examples. It was designed to plant a seed of doubt, a tiny crack in Isabel's professional shield. Eleanor watched, with an almost detached, clinical interest, as the subtle ripples spread. She had a contact, a low-level employee at Isabel's firm. She'd befriended this person under a carefully constructed fake identity months ago, feeding them harmless industry gossip while slowly pumping them for information. Through this unwitting informant, Eleanor learned that the email had definitely caused a stir. Isabel was questioned, subtly at first, then more directly. Her confidence, usually so solid, started to show tiny cracks. She became defensive, a little paranoid. That air of effortless competence she always projected began to fray around the edges. At the same time, Eleanor started to manipulate Isabel's social life. A few carefully planted rumors, disguised as sympathetic whispers among mutual acquaintances she'd found through Isabel's online footprint. Nothing you could trace back, always deniable. Whispers about Isabel's ruthless ambition, her willingness to step on anyone to get ahead. Tiny social poisons, delivered with pinpoint accuracy. Eleanor found a grim satisfaction in this. It wasn't the explosive confrontation she sometimes dreamed about, but it was a start. It was the slow, methodical unraveling she had envisioned. She was pulling the first thread, and she knew, with a chilling certainty, that eventually, the entire tapestry of Isabel Moreau's life would come undone. It was almost alarming how easily these first deceptions took hold, a real testament to how fragile reputations can be, and how readily people will believe negativity if it's packaged just right. As Eleanor got deeper into her plan, the lines between justice and obsession started to get blurry. Her world narrowed, her entire focus consumed by the intricate dance of her vengeance. She uncovered more about Richard's deception, not just the affair itself, but a pattern of casual lies and financial missteps that painted a picture of a man she barely recognized. It seemed the affair with Isabel wasn't an isolated incident, but a symptom of a deeper character flaw, a selfishness he'd expertly hidden beneath a charming surface for years. This discovery didn't lessen her anger towards Isabel, it cranked it up. Isabel was merely the latest, most damaging proof of Richard's deceit. The dark secrets weren't just Richard's. Eleanor, in her relentless digging for information on Isabel, stumbled upon inconsistencies in Isabel's own carefully crafted history. A prestigious internship that seemed to have no official record. Vague references to a past that Isabel clearly kept under wraps. These weren't bombshells, not yet, but they were leverage. More threads for Eleanor to pull. One evening, while sifting through obscure bits of online data related to Isabel's past business dealings from a previous, short-lived startup, Eleanor found something more concrete. A series of disgruntled comments on an obscure forum from former colleagues, hinting at manipulative behavior and even financial misdeeds, quickly hushed up. It wasn't enough for legal action, but it was enough to add a much stronger poison to her arsenal. An anonymous tip to a financial blogger who specialized in industry exposés, complete with just enough verifiable, yet context-stripped, information to get them interested. Eleanor felt a cold thrill as she hit send. This was escalating. The initial plan had been to socially and professionally isolate Isabel. Now, it was teetering on the edge of something that could have much more serious, tangible consequences. Her resolve didn't waver, but a small, almost forgotten part of her, the Eleanor who tended roses and believed in the good in people, felt a faint tremor of unease. Was this who she was now? Someone who dealt in shadows and whispers, a destroyer of lives? The answer came back, sharp and swift. She was what they had made her. Richard, with his betrayal. Isabel, with her complicity. This was the price of their actions. The financial blogger took the bait. A carefully worded article appeared. It didn't directly accuse Isabel of anything illegal, but it raised serious questions about her past business ethics, citing anonymous sources and documents. The timing was perfect. Isabel was already under scrutiny at work thanks to Eleanor's initial email campaign. Now, this public airing of doubt, however speculative, cast a much darker shadow. Her firm, super sensitive about its public image, put Isabel on administrative leave. This was a huge win for Eleanor, a tangible result of her meticulous planning. Yet, it also marked a turning point. There was no going back now. The whispers had become shouts. The subtle manipulations had led to real, serious consequences. Richard, completely unaware of Eleanor's orchestrations but increasingly stressed by Isabel's turmoil, which Isabel, in her distress, undoubtedly shared with him, became more erratic, more withdrawn. Their already fractured home life deteriorated further into a cold war of unspoken accusations and icy silences. Eleanor felt a strange detachment from it all, as if she were watching a play unfold, a tragedy she herself had written. The emotional pain of the initial betrayal was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was now overlaid with the grim satisfaction of her unfolding revenge. She thought about the term deadly revenge. She wasn't planning to physically harm Isabel, not in the usual sense, but she was aiming for a kind of death. The death of a career, the death of a reputation, the death of the life Isabel had built. Wasn't that, in its own way, a lethal blow? The final piece of her plan, the one she considered her masterstroke, was still to come. It was riskier, more direct, and designed to strike at the very core of Isabel's carefully constructed world, and to implicate Richard in a way that would leave him no escape from the fallout either. She spent weeks refining it, going over every detail, thinking through every possible outcome. This wasn't just about Isabel anymore. It was about exposing the full extent of the deceit, making them both accountable, not just to her, but to the world they had tried to fool. The rose bushes in her garden were wilting from neglect, their vibrant colors fading, much like the softer parts of Eleanor herself. She had chosen her path. The annual charity gala hosted by Richard's company. That was the stage Eleanor chose for her final act. It was the highlight of their social calendar, an event where reputations were buffed and deals were sealed. Isabel would be there, not as Richard's official guest. Even he wasn't that brazen, but as an attendee from her own firm, trying to network, to salvage what she could of her fractured career. Eleanor knew Richard would seek her out. He was weak, predictable. Eleanor arrived, not as the grieving, downtrodden wife, but as a woman reborn in ice and fire. She wore a stunning crimson dress, a shocking contrast to her usual muted colors. Her demeanor was poised, almost serene, a terrifying calm that Richard, when he first saw her, found deeply unsettling. He tried to approach her, to offer some empty platitude, but she met his gaze with a look so devoid of warmth, so full of something he couldn't name, that he just faltered. The plan had multiple layers. Earlier that week, Eleanor had anonymously leaked a carefully curated package to several key society gossips, and one particularly tenacious investigative journalist who had a history with Richard's company. The package contained copies of Richard's incriminating credit card statements, hotel bookings under false names that she'd linked back to him, and even a few strategically chosen, intimate email excerpts between Richard and Isabel that Eleanor had painstakingly recovered from an old, shared family computer Richard had carelessly forgotten to wipe. These weren't just about the affair. They hinted at Richard using company resources for his trysts, a very dangerous accusation. But the centerpiece of her revenge was more personal, more theatrical. During a lull in the evening's events, just as the CEO of Richard's company was giving a speech about integrity and trust, a series of images flashed onto the large projection screens on either side of the stage. Not the company's logo, but photographs. Candid shots of Richard and Isabel, laughing intimately in a secluded restaurant, a stolen kiss in a hotel lobby, Isabel wearing a distinctive necklace, one Eleanor recognized as a gift Richard had claimed was a client appreciation purchase. A collective gasp went through the ballroom. All eyes darted from the screens to Richard, whose face had gone chalk white, then to Isabel, who looked as though she'd been physically slapped. Eleanor watched, her expression unreadable. But she hadn't stopped there. The final image was a side-by-side comparison. Isabel's gleeful face next to Eleanor's, taken on their last anniversary. A stark, visual gut punch of the betrayal. Then, Eleanor's voice, pre-recorded, cool and steady, filled the silence. Not a rant, but a calm, factual narration of the affair's timeline, the lies, the deceit, woven with references to the evidence now in the hands of the press. She spoke of the sanctity of vows, the devastation of betrayal, and the ethical lapses that seemed to run rampant not just in personal lives, but potentially professional ones too. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The words, clear and cutting, were enough. The deadly blow wasn't a physical act of violence, but a public execution of their reputations, their careers, their carefully constructed lies. The social ruin was swift and brutal. The aftermath was pure chaos. A storm of whispers, accusations, and frantic damage control. Richard's CEO, a man legendary for his zero-tolerance policy on scandals that could tarnish the company's pristine image, looked like he was about to explode. Isabel Moreau simply vanished from the ballroom, her face a mask of horror and humiliation. Richard stood frozen, an instant outcast in a room full of his peers, the target of 100 judgmental stares. Eleanor walked out of the gala with a quiet dignity, leaving the wreckage behind her. She didn't feel the elation she had perhaps expected. Instead, there was a vast, echoing emptiness. The fire of her rage had burned through its fuel, and now, in its place, was a chilling void. Had it been worth it? The destruction was absolute. Isabel's career, already on shaky ground, was now completely shattered. The blogosphere and gossip columns exploded with the scandal. Her firm, facing a PR nightmare, quickly terminated her contract, citing a morals clause. She became a social pariah, the Scarlet Woman in a very public drama. Richard's fate was no less severe. An internal investigation was launched immediately by his company, not just into the affair, but into the misuse of company funds Eleanor had so subtly implied. His professional life was in ruins. Their shared assets, once a symbol of their joint success, became a battleground for divorce lawyers. The friends they had shared for years awkwardly chose sides, or more often, just retreated, not wanting to be drawn into the ugliness. That phrase, threatening to consume everyone involved, from her early thoughts, echoed in Eleanor's mind. It was true. The revenge had been a destructive force, a wildfire that had not just burned her targets, but had also scorched the earth around them. Even Eleanor, the architect of it all, felt its heat. She was free of Richard, yes. She had exacted her pound of flesh, and then some. But the process had changed her. The softness was gone, replaced by a hard, brittle strength. She looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, her eyes reflecting a world weariness that hadn't been there before. The victory felt hollow, the silence in her large, empty house more profound than ever. Was this the justice she sought? Or had she merely traded one kind of prison for another? The fallout is immense, isn't it? Eleanor got her revenge, but at what cost? We've all felt betrayal, but how far is too far? Before we see how this story truly ends, take a moment to think about that. If you're finding this exploration of human emotion and consequence compelling, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon so you're notified for our next deep dive. Months trickled by. The storm of the scandal eventually calmed down, leaving behind a changed landscape. Richard, stripped of his job and much of his social standing, was a shadow of his former self. He attempted a few pathetic attempts at reconciliation, not out of love, Eleanor suspected, but out of a desperate need to reclaim some piece of his former life. She shut him down coldly, decisively. Their divorce was finalized, a clean, sharp cut. Isabel Moreau had reportedly left the city, seeking anonymity somewhere else, her name a lingering cautionary tale in certain circles. Eleanor had, effectively, achieved her deadly revenge. She had systematically, publicly, and professionally destroyed them. Yet, the satisfaction was fleeting, quickly replaced by a nagging introspection. The meticulous planning, the cold execution, it had required her to nurture the darkest parts of herself. And now, in the quiet aftermath, those parts lingered. The final twist wasn't another act of sabotage, nor was it some dramatic confrontation. It came quietly, from a completely unexpected place. One afternoon, Eleanor received a letter. It wasn't from Richard or Isabel. It was from Isabel's older sister, a woman Eleanor hadn't even known existed during her reconnaissance. The letter wasn't accusatory, not filled with rage. It was quiet, sorrowful, and in its own way, devastating. It detailed Isabel's long struggle with a deeply insecure personality, her lifelong pattern of seeking validation in all the wrong places, often through destructive relationships. It spoke of a previous incident, years ago, where Isabel had been involved with another married man, an affair that had ended disastrously and had sent Isabel into a spiral of depression. The sister didn't excuse Isabel's actions, not at all, but she painted a picture of a deeply flawed, almost pitiable individual, rather than the cold, calculating predator Eleanor had built up in her mind. She was wrong, terribly wrong, the letter read. What she did to you, to your marriage, is unforgivable. But what you did to her, you didn't just seek justice, Mrs. Ainsworth. You sought annihilation, and perhaps you don't realize, but in doing so, you annihilated a part of her that was already broken. The letter included a small, faded photograph of a much younger Isabel, smiling shyly, looking vulnerable and unsure. It was a stark contrast to the confident, ambitious woman Eleanor had targeted. For the first time, a flicker of something other than triumph or emptiness stirred within Eleanor. It wasn't guilt, not exactly, but it was a profound, unsettling realization. Her revenge, so perfectly executed, had been aimed at a caricature, a villain of her own making, fueled by her own immense pain. The real Isabel was, perhaps, more complex, more tragic, than Eleanor had ever allowed herself to consider. The deadly revenge had been effective, yes, but it had also been a blunt instrument, causing collateral damage she hadn't foreseen, revealing a human cost that went beyond the satisfying downfall of her enemies. The truth was, the affair itself was a symptom of multiple failings, Richard's, Isabel's, and perhaps even the silent erosions within her own marriage that she had failed to see until it was too late. The real deadly aspect was not just the ruin she had brought about, but the profound understanding that in the tangled web of human relationships, actions have far-reaching consequences, often touching lives and vulnerabilities in ways one can never fully predict or control. Eleanor had won her war, but the peace that followed was heavy with the weight of that understanding. She was free, but the taste of her victory was now irrevocably bittersweet, a complex cocktail of justice, sorrow, and a chilling awareness of her own capacity for destruction. Her self-empowerment had come at the cost of another's complete devastation, a devastation that now seemed less like a triumph and more like a somber reflection of her own journey through pain. Eleanor Ainsworth's story is a dark, tangled mess of betrayal, heartbreak, and the consuming fire of revenge. She wanted to reclaim her power, to deliver a deadly blow to those who had shattered her world. And in many ways, she succeeded, orchestrating a downfall that was as public as it was ruinous. But the journey into the heart of vengeance is rarely a straight line, is it? What starts as a quest for justice can easily twist into something far more complex, something that changes not only the targets, but the avenger herself. The elaborate plan, the unexpected twists, the dark secrets that came out, they all played their part in a tragedy that, in the end, left no true victors. Only survivors, all bearing different scars. Eleanor's revenge was indeed deadly, not in the sense of a physical ending, but in the profound and irreversible destruction of lives, reputations, and perhaps a part of her own soul. It's a chilling reminder that while the desire for payback in the face of deep betrayal is a powerfully human instinct, the path of revenge is often a lonely, desolate one, its landscape littered with unintended consequences and uncomfortable truths about ourselves. That neat resolution of a wrong being righted, it's often just a mirage. The reality is far murkier, far more unsettling. The story of Eleanor, Richard, and Isabel is a stark look at the extremes of human emotion, isn't it? What did you think of Eleanor's choices? Was her revenge justified, or did she cross a line? These are the kinds of complex questions we love to explore here. If this story resonated with you, or made you think, please show your support by hitting that like button. It really helps us bring more narratives like this to you. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the intricate, often dark, corners of human experience. Until next time, stay thoughtful and stay engaged.